Several months ago, I picked up the phone and I made the call to Fidelity, the mutual fund company, the brokerage house. It was a call I'd been dreading because it made everything final. I finally got to a customer service rep and explained that my mother had passed away at Thanksgiving and I was the beneficiary of one of her accounts. The customer service rep very politely, very nicely said, "I'm sorry for your loss." And I wanted to say, "Don't be." You see, my mother had dementia. She'd had it for over 10 years. For the last 8 or so, she hadn't known my name. And when you go through dementia, it's death by 1,000 cuts. So at every visit, you would see this strong, vibrant woman who, as a young girl, had left the poverty of Appalachia, gone to Washington, D.C. in nursing school with nothing but a suitcase. You saw this woman go from something big, just a little bit less each time. And it was terrible to watch. And by the end, I was just empty. But I'm not going to tell that to a customer service rep. She's not my friend. She's not my therapist. So I just said, "Thank you." The process was very easy. She took down some information. My brother had already given the death certificate over. And I finally asked the question that I'm a little embarrassed to say I really wanted to know more than anything else. Was there any money left in her estate? And there was. Not a fortune, but enough to buy a nice car or take the family on a great vacation. So I couldn't believe that was the case. That's not the story you hear. My brother had been managing my mom's affairs for a long time, and she had been in the nursing home for almost 11 years. That's not the story of any money being left, and I couldn't imagine how that happened. And then I remembered a Thanksgiving 40 years earlier. On Wednesday, I was home for the big Thanksgiving holiday, and the next day my mother would be making a turkey with stuffing and all the dressing. Now, for you young people, you may not know that stuffing didn't used to come in a box, that you would actually stuff it in a turkey with different herbs and spices, and then that would create the juices from the turkey, would make a great stuffing, just wonderful. But my mother didn't have any bread, so she was going to send me to the store to get a loaf of bread. She handed me $5 and said, "I want you to go to the store, the thrift store, and get the cheapest loaf of bread they have. Don't give me any of that gold bread with 147 grains made with buttermilk. That's crap." My mother didn't dislike the good bread. It was just one of those things that people who had something bought to make people who had nothing feel bad, in her mind. "Get the cheapest loaf they have. Usually it's 3 loaves for $1, but I only want 1 loaf. You may have to pay 39 cents. You may even have to pay 49 cents. I thought, I'm going to drive 10 miles to go save $1 for a loaf of bread. But you're not going to win that argument with my mother. I got in the car, and as I drove away, I went by Coleman's Market. Now, Coleman's was a small farmer's market I had worked at going through high school and at the community college. It's about 7 car lengths wide, 2 car lengths deep. And when I walked in, I immediately went to work because it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and they're swamped. I swept the floor. I manned the cash register. I brought produce in from the cooler. And all the while, I'm catching up with the Colemans, just having a great time. And after 45 minutes, I say, "Hey, Mr. Coleman, I need to leave. My mom sent me for a loaf of bread to get stuffing, and I need to get back home." Big cigar in his mouth. He said, "Boy, just take a loaf of bread." And I hesitated. And Mrs. Coleman, who was standing behind me, knew why I hesitated. You see, they were from Appalachia too. They understood the value of $1. They knew what hard times were like. They knew that those hard times were always around the corner. And while she would never buy that loaf of bread for herself, she was more than happy to sell it to you and make more money. She just said, "Boy, Rick, take the loaf of bread. You've been working for the last 45 minutes. As I walked out the door, Mr. Coleman put me to work for another 15 minutes so that he could get that even hour out of me. Well, when I got home, we had a split-level house. You come into a little vestibule. If you go downstairs, that's where my bedroom is, the basement, the door to the garage. Or you go upstairs to where the other bedrooms are in the kitchen. So I went upstairs, put the $5 on the table next to the kitchen, went in and put the loaf of bread down on the counter, And I heard my mother, "Where have you been?" I said, "I stopped by the Colemans." And then you heard it. Thud, thud, thud. My mother was marching down the stairs, down the hall. I tried to sneak by her, barely made it down the first flight of stairs to that little vestibule when I heard, "Gosh darn it!" She didn't say, "Gosh darn it." "I told you to get the cheapest loaf of bread possible." She came storming out of the kitchen, looking down at me at the bottom of the stairs. "You boys don't understand the value of a dollar. I'm paying for your college, and you're out wasting money on this cold bread." I'm just looking at her scared, my eyes big as saucers. 20-year-old man still scared of his mother. And then she did it. She took her hand, took a big chunk of that loaf of bread, threw the plastic, ripped it out, and threw it at me. And as she's screaming, her face turning red, spit coming out of the side of her mouth, she's throwing chunks of bread at me. I'm down there dodging the bread, actually more dodging her stares. As the bread goes by the chandelier, I'm looking to see if there's actually gold up in there. Finally, she stops to take a breath. I say, Mom, the Colemans gave me that bread." "What?" "Yeah, you know how Mr. Coleman is. He's always going to put me to work. He gave me that loaf of bread." My mother looked at me and says, well, that's different, isn't it?" She took stock of the situation. She looked at me. She looked at the bread on the floor. "Where's my money?" "Mom, the $5 is right there on the table next to the kitchen." She picked it up, and as she looked at the whole situation, she said, "Well, we're still going to need a loaf of bread, so I want you to go to the thrift store and get the cheapest loaf possible." I wanted to tell the customer service rep at Vanguard about that loaf of bread and my mother and the Colemans and holidays, but I didn't. She's not my friend. She's not my therapist. I wanted to tell her my brother had done a great job managing our mother's affairs. And I wanted to tell her that that money we inherited wouldn't be used to buy a car or go on a vacation. That would probably be inherited by my children because my mother did teach me the value of a dollar. But I didn't tell her that either. I just said, "Thank you. You've been very helpful, ma'am." She said, "You're welcome. Is there anything else, sir?" "Yes, ma'am. I just want you to know I miss my mother. Thank you."